Hey everybody, so recently 2 time lapses have been released for EU5. In these time lapses, as you can see, the AI did not expand very much throughout these hundreds of years of gameplay. Because of that, lots of comments have expressed a lot of hate towards the game, lots of people have lost faith in the game. I've seen Reddit posts of people encouraging everybody to refund the game. Even my friends have expressed dismay and lost faith in the game themselves. I've received very many messages on Discord and other places of people asking me my opinion on this and if the game will be a disaster at launch. Being that I cannot actually show any footage from the game, I will just be using this video in a podcast format. We will just be talking and explaining why myself and pretty much all other content creators have not lost faith in the game and haven't really been moved at all by these timelines. In fact, after watching these time lapses, I really didn't care much at all and just sort of went on with my day. It was only later that over the past week that I've seen this drama start becoming more and more prevalent. So this will be my response to it. And again, it will be done in a podcast format. So if you are looking for something super visually stimulating, well, dumb. You can put me on your second monitor, you can listen along as you sleep, or just put me on your TV and pretend that somebody is there while you scroll Reddit on your phone. These would all be great things. I say that because it would just increase viewer retention for the video and make sure that you all understand where we're going with this. Now, I'm going to be reading through this giant post I did on Patreon. This is a free post. Don't think I'm trying to sell Patreon or anything like that. I just figured that this would probably be the best way for me to do a giant post like this that I could then read through. And I put this in the comments if you want to read through it yourself. I'm not the best writer. I do have some mild dyslexia and ADHD, so some things I will type wrong here. I'm doing my best. As always, do make sure to like, do make sure to subscribe, do make sure to leave a comment down below on any of your thoughts. That would be absolutely wonderful. So, EU5 timeline drama and my opinion. A lot of people have been messaging me, asking me about the EU5 timeline. You can see it here. Having played the game for about 400 hours now, I dismissed this as not being very relevant. But a lot of people have been dooming over it. People have been saying, this is a clear sign we're getting another terrible Paradox release. Some YouTubers have made a response to the drama, and I figured I'd make a response to it. Here's what we're going to talk about. What EU5 even is as a video game, what you spend the majority of your time doing, and why this drama doesn't seem to be impacting the vast majority of content creators who continue to believe the game is good, which I think you will pretty much find that most content creators are continuing to make content. And yes, I do think that there is an argument from the community. You can argue that people are looking for the ad revenue, they're trying to keep hype for the game, but I don't think that's what's going on here, and I don't think that people really realize how niche Paradox games already are as an audience, that people aren't like getting into making content for Paradox games for the big bucks here, okay? The first problem I'm going to immediately run into is asking myself, what don't you guys know? I've been playing EU5 on and off for about a month now, I think, and I have over 300 hours in the game. I'm trying to play it less so that I can actually make videos and stream, and so I don't wear it out by the time it launches so that I can stream it daily. What that means, though, is that I know so much about the game that it's hard for me to describe a lot of things in ways that I don't miss obvious details. So, this is just a human thing. When you know a lot about a subject, you tend to talk about things as if somebody else knows about the subject. This means that a lot of times when I describe games like this, why I say, oh, I don't really care about that time lapse, it doesn't occur to me all the time, and it probably doesn't occur to a lot of other content creators that people from the outside looking in are probably going, wait, this looks really, really bad. And for the people playing the game right now are going, oh, why? Why do you think that? But it's really important for me to explain all that. Okay, for example, I said in a previous video that Germany doesn't have much content. What I meant to say is, other than the Dutch, Swiss, Austria, Bohemia, Saxony, Brandenburg, and the Hansa, the generic Germans don't have much content through cultural advancements. I assumed people knew about the nations with unique content, and I assumed that we all knew there were lots of situations unique to the German region, and that we all knew I was talking purely about cultural advancements. Wording things properly, especially on the internet, is particularly difficult for me. Wording things properly when people get angry and want to take things more serious than you intended to be is even more difficult for all people. What I mean by that is when somebody asked me, when I was on stream and I was talking about advancements that were unique for each area, somebody asked me what advancements did the Germans get? And I said, well, they don't really get that many, which is true. Generic Germans and generic German cultures, for example, Rhine-Franconian, I think only has 2 or 3 advancements. Germans as a whole have 4 in total. So there's really not that many advancements for generic Germans, which you can argue is a problem, and I have expressed that I also think that's a problem, but I did not mean there's no content at all and it's a black hole, much like it would be in maybe Crusader Kings 3. There's situations like the Hussite Wars, like the Reformation, the 30 Years' War. There are some unique culture advancements to them. They do get the Landsknecht in Age 3, which is a particularly devastating unit. And there are, as I said here, the Dutch, the Swiss, Hansa, Bohemia, Saxony, Brandenburg, many nations, in fact, that do have content. So I said one thing, obviously meant another thing, and people now think that I said it, well, an entirely different thing that I meant to say. I'm going to first explain the EU5 gameplay loop, and then I'm going to explain the AI issues, but don't think that this means I'm dismissing the AI issues and saying they're totally fine. If you read till the end of this post, you'll see why I don't think the AI issues will last till launch, and even if they did, why they'd be particularly fixable. So let's start with the basics. What is EU5 even about? I would describe my time in EU5 as working on a fixed up version of Imperator Rome's territory management, using the economy more similar to Victoria 3, and having the EU4 systems as the base flavor of it all. You'll see a lot of similarities when you start playing the game. There's still CBs, there's still armies walking around the map that you control, there's still discipline, there's still improved relation modifiers, etc. A lot of these modifiers have been touched up to be slightly different, or more balanced, or be changed in some way. It feels like EU4 2 in that regard. People who are older might remember when games would have a sequel and they'd use that sequel to revisit older mechanics. Now, you might not have played all these different games I just described, but what I do mean is we have much more granularity in locations. We do have rural, town, city, which if you played Imperator Rome is like how in there, I believe they do rural, city, metropolis. So you have that sort of territory system where rural areas are very important for food and cities eat all your food. You do have a Victoria 3 style economy with trading, with inputting goods to make other goods, with basic goods that can be ground up from the earth. It's very much like that. And all of this goes over in EU4 flavoring, where you still have similar armies to EU4, although I would say armies in this game, in EU4, armies were very much more designed around infantry and artillery, which was really more relevant to the Napoleonic Wars. In this game, armies are based around cavalry and infantry. Artillery becomes more and more prominent as the game goes on, becomes way, way, way more powerful. But on a base level, the way the combat system works, the way the formations work, are much more designed to make having combined cavalry and infantry important, whereas in EU4, as you guys might know, you would often just ditch cavalry entirely, which didn't really actually make much sense. The main gameplay element, at least for me, is building up your territories. That means setting up cities, setting up towns, and setting up rural areas. Building RGOs, those are the basic resources on your locations. RGOs will be things like lumber, wine, stone, iron, copper, anything like that. Locations also have secondary resources they can produce, such as all areas with woods being able to place down lumber mills to also produce lumber. A lumber RGO though will, to my knowledge, not have any resource upkeep, and then will be cheaper. Lumber RGOs also allow you to place down a sawmill and get 10% lumber. I just said that because I think if, this is kind of me trying to set myself up, if I say that you can put lumber mills down in an area with woods, people might say, well, what good are lumber RGOs then? Lumber RGOs will be better, cheaper, and allow you to get a sawmill, which makes them produce more. And what I mean by all of this is you are setting up an economy. That's the main gameplay element. Rural areas produce food, cities eat food, and then cities produce lots of resources. I can, in a rural area though, if it's on wine or something like that, I can decide this is wine on woods. Let's, instead of producing the wine, let's use these populations and put down a bunch of lumber mills, and let's get a bunch of lumbers out of that. Or you can get iron out of some provinces, not a lot, but you can get iron as a secondary resource. There's a lot of secondary resources you can put onto a lot of these, right? So you guys get the basic idea. Cities take basic goods, make them into something, and then rural areas produce basic goods. Cities can also produce basic goods. The game gets very complicated as time goes on. You set up scriptoriums to produce books, and having books allows you to set up libraries. Libraries in turn then have an upkeep on books, which let you produce more scriptoriums. The efficiency of a building depends on the cost of its input goods and how much it can sell the output goods for. Since libraries then upkeep books, this makes books more efficient to produce. Scriptoriums take paper, so your paper buildings now become more efficient. There are various ways to produce paper, so all the input goods you need to produce paper become more efficient. The gameplay pattern, to me, revolves around these sorts of things. So in this example, you put down scriptoriums onto your towns and cities. Scriptoriums produce books. Books are then used either by your nobility, your clergy, and your burghers, just because they like having books, or upkeep by various buildings, the most prominent of which is the library, and then in age 2, the university. Because these now have an upkeep of books, scriptoriums become more efficient. They now are worth more. The worth of a location is the tax base. The tax base of a location can go up and down over time wildly. So if you use more books, the tax base of a location will go up, making you more money because these scriptoriums now actually are worth more. Even though you're the one paying the library's upkeep, you're actually getting more money out of it. So you're setting up a whole economy. You're making your entire country richer. And of course, I did mention paper. Because the scriptoriums need paper to turn into books, we now need paper guilds to be producing that paper. Paper can be made out of various different production methods, and there are some more advanced ones as time goes on. But if we had, for example, paper could come out of some lumber with maybe some fiber, and then we would be using this, and this will make these basic goods worth more, which will then in turn increase the tax base, the value of these rural locations. And basically, do you see the gameplay loop starting to happen here? This is actually quite fun to do, and I think a lot of people who play Victoria 3 will be interested in this sort of thing. After economy has its goods needs taken care of, meaning that after you've gotten generally enough furniture, enough wood for the furniture, you've gotten enough beer, you've gotten tools. The tools can help getting these basic goods out, so you can get iron, stone, I believe stone tools. I think Russia starts the game still on stone tools because they don't have much access to iron up there at game start. So you can you make your tools, then lumber mills, because lumber mills are a secondary resource. They need tools to upkeep, but you will need lots of lumber mills because lumber can become quite difficult to get, right? So maybe you need iron or something like that, or a secondary resource. You're going to need tools for that. So you need tools, but then you need iron into tool. Once you kind of have your entire country's basic loop done, and it doesn't take too long to do all that, faster and faster as you get better at the game. As I mentioned, after a country has its goods needs taken care of and you have enough basic resources, you might reach a point where it's difficult to find anything efficient to build. So you will, obviously, you are still in a late medieval economy. This is not an industrial economy. You can reach the point where if you produce more furniture, you're actually going to make it inefficient because you've got everybody that needs chairs has chairs. Peasants don't need a lot. They're peasants, right? And so how do you continue to then expand your economy? Well, one example I give here is this is solved through either spamming down marketplaces, which do have a goods upkeep, to give you more trade capacity, or through some age 2 buildings with upkeeps. These can be armories for manpower, universities for more literacy and population promotion speed, or theaters. You build buildings which need goods, and then in turn those goods become worth producing, and you just keep expanding your country and becoming more and more powerful. So if you do reach a point where you can make the most fine cloth your country would need, and I say fine cloth mostly pushes east, because the silk for fine cloth mostly comes out of, I believe, Italy, bits of France, Aragon maybe, and you need to import that silk to turn cloth into fine cloth. You also need alum. That's a resource for dyes. There's not a lot of alum in Russia. So the way I like to describe is you push fine cloth east. Because the further into Europe you are, and we're talking from a European perspective here, the further east you go from Europe, the more distance you're going to have to import these goods from, meaning the more expensive it's going to be to do this. So you can set up lots of marketplaces, export your fine cloth. Now you need more fine cloth, so then you put up more fine cloth, but now to make fine cloth, you're going to need regular cloth, meaning you're going to need more silk, meaning you're going to need more marketplaces, meaning you're probably going to need more burgers, because burgers do try to import goods, but having goods met without the burgers will actually become more efficient. And so you can keep building. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the marketplaces themselves do have a little bit of upkeep. And then if you can continue to fill the needs of those marketplaces, or if we're talking into age 2, once you get armories need, I think, weapons, leather, and maybe guns. And so then you're going to need to get more leather. What does leather need? What do guns need? What if weapons need? You're probably going to need to get more iron. So you can see the gameplay loop emerging here, and you can see that this is going to start being how you actually play the game. And this is all, I'm saying all this because, as you can imagine, what does this have to do with the AI? Well, not a whole lot, which I'll get into in a second. There's also the ever-growing need for food. As you promote more and more pops to clerics and burgers, it will no longer be peasants producing food. They will eat more food and produce no food. The need for strong food-producing rural locations then starts arising. You want a location with a strong food good, wheat or livestock, on a location with access to a fresh water source, a river or freshwater lake. Those allow you to build irrigation, which slightly increase pop capacity, but importantly give you a food output modifier to the location. So if you have a wheat RGO on a river, you can then put up irrigation. Each irrigation increases food output, I think, by like 2.5%, something like that. So the more irrigation you have, the more percent output you'll get. And that's really good on rivers and freshwater lakes, importantly. And this does mean that not all food provinces are equal. Fruit obviously gives less food than livestock and wheat. You put livestock, you put that on a river, that's just going to outproduce a fruit province that's just in the hills or something by a fairly large amount. Then if all the food RGOs are built and irrigation is built, you can also start producing farming villages. Farming villages produce livestock, flat food, and give a food output modifier as well. Now, with irrigation giving you a percent output modifier to food, farming villages giving you a percent output modifier to food, and farming villages giving you livestock, which is a large source of flat food, as I say here, the difference between a well-built food location and one that you merely slap down food RGOs on can be 6-1, meaning that I've seen some locations can produce maybe like 50 food. You build a bunch of food RGOs on them, you forget about them, they're in a hill or something, then you get a good 50 food out of them, which isn't bad, but a fully built up mega farm village, and it doesn't have to be, you don't want it to be a town, you don't want it to be a city, just a rural super farming area. I've seen them produce 350, even 400 plus food. These areas can produce a lot of food. Of course, you might not have enough population in a territory to man all the food RGOs, the farming villages, and the irrigation. You'll have to use one of your valuable cabinet positions to push migration to that location to fill out enough people, because you need people to migrate into these jobs, and this is a medieval economy, right? You can't just put up like a brochure. You can't take an ad out in the newspaper and say, come here for jobs. You would have to, as a government, encourage people to actually move into that location. And most locations will not have enough starting population to man all these areas. Or you could make the choice to leave it as is and use your cabinet positions to do something you find more valuable. This is where the choices on how you actually play the game out start to come in. You can use your cabinet to develop provinces, you can use it to integrate provinces, you can use it to increase stability, increase legitimacy, you can use it to culturally convert people, religiously convert people. So just using it, saying just use a cabinet position on migration, well, Okay, well, which one of these are you giving up to then use the migration? Because you have to give something up. You have 2 cabinet positions at game start by default, 3 in age 2. Some countries have 3 in age 1. Some have 4 in age 1, like the Ottomans. But even then, you need them all doing something. The Ottomans might have 4 cabinet positions, but they're going to need those positions on converting people, on assimilating people, on integrating land. You have to make a hard decision here if you want to set up mega foodtropolis or if you want more development on your land so the land is worth more to begin with. This is, of course, keeping in mind Parliament. Every 5 years, you can use Parliament to get access to a CB, so you don't have to do a no CB war. That takes 50% support. That's a casus belli. By the way, that's what that means if you didn't pick up on that. That takes 50% support from Parliament away, though, when you get a Parliament CB. Meaning you need 50% support in your parliament, and then you lose that 50% support when you get a casus belli from them. You don't maintain that 50% support. You don't just get one for free. You have to spend your support to get it. You need 50% approval from parliament to pass a parliament action you're trying to take. If you fail a parliament action, less than 50% support, you lose 7 stability. It's your choice if you always want to use parliament to generate a CB, but you can use your support to get a free law change or just sit on parliament and let it pass. Now, when you do open up your opening parliaments, right, your first 3, 4, 5 parliaments, you might want to change some of your laws. Changing your laws will use that 50% support as well. So you will then have to make a decision as to how many things you try to give away to your estate. Sometimes you get really easy things that your estates ask for. They'll give you 27 support if you give them belligerent support. And your nobles like you, and your belligerent slider moves up a little bit. But your clerics, your peasants, and your burghers get a little bit annoyed because you just supported your nobles, right? But other times the nobles might ask you and give you 32 support to give them a privilege. Well, you can't do anything else with your nobles because you would have to give them that privilege to then see what their next thing could be. So you might just get stuck. You might just get a parliament that you might have to work with the clerics, burghers, and peasants. But peasants, right? And these are the decisions you're trying to make this whole time, right? Sometimes you get easy parliaments. Sometimes you get hard parliaments. Sometimes you get a parliament action that you really want to pass and you really want to leave yourself with 50% support. Sometimes you get some events during parliament. Sometimes you get really easy parliaments. You can get like 100 support so you can get a CB and pass the parliament. Now, what is passing a parliament? Passing parliament ranges from not being very impactful to long-term massive benefits. Permanent increasing the effective RGO size of a location by 1 is, I should probably clarify this here. Maybe I'll do it after this video. So you can permanently increase the effective RGO size of a location by 1, or set up a new town for free, or permanently push yourself to further centralizing. My past tense and current tense usage here is not great. Or you can get more development, or you can get something just simple like stability. Parliaments will always have a modifier you get while it's active, such as reducing the cost of setting up new food RGOs, and in effect when it passes, such as permanently increasing the size of a food RGO location. So if I decide to, I worded this very poorly, I'm realizing now. But what I mean here is that I can look at my parliaments, right? I think you get somewhere like from 8 to 12 choices, and I can look at them and I can see, ooh, that one I want to go with right there. That one says, for the year I'm having this parliament in action, I get a 20% reduction to all food RGOs. And if it passes, 2 of my food RGOs permanently increase by size by 1, meaning that you can employ 1,000 more people at that location. Now, do remember, if these are in some good locations that have irrigation and farming villages, that those 1,000 workers will be worth a lot more than just 1,000 workers. So you need to decide to yourself, how much is a CB worth? How much is a law change worth? Do I really need to go to war right now? Could I risk just doing a no CB war and eating the penalties of that? Or do I really need this extra town? Or do I really need this push towards being more centralized and all the benefits thereof? These are the choices you have to make when playing your country. Why did I just say all this? I said all this because absolutely nothing of what I just said has anything to do with how much the AI expands or doesn't expand. I have gotten lost in developing my country more than a few times. I keep delaying using my parliament for a CB, thinking to myself, oh, I just need 5 more years to build a few things and I'll go to war. I use 5 more years and 5 more years, and I just want to spend my money on a few more roads to getting my iron producing territories closer in proximity to my capital. Then, because my iron is cheaper, I can get a few more armories down. With access to tons of surplus manpower, I can now increase the size of my army, since the armory is using many goods to maintain itself. And my buildings become far more efficient, and I could expand my buildings, growing my economy. By this, what I mean is I have played, for example, Austria before, and I've thought to myself, oh, I really want to get a road to this iron province, or I should say this iron location, because if an area is closer in proximity to you, an RGO becomes more profitable and the population promotion speed will go up. Because just because you put 9 iron RGOs doesn't mean every peasant just runs in and becomes an iron worker. That's not how it works. They need to promote slowly, even slower if they're not close in proximity. So if I actually want these 9 iron mines I just placed down to actually do anything, I need to build a road to it, because I'm going to be waiting a long time, years, decade maybe. If it's not in close proximity, I might be waiting a whole decade for all these iron workers to be promoted. And then now, because you get more iron, your armories might be a little cheaper. You might be making more money and then just want to be spending that money on armories. Now, I do want to say, and this is one thing that I definitely forgot to mention, as I did mention, you will, if you play this game a lot, you will forget to mention a lot of different things, right? Manpower buildings, all buildings in this game, there are some buildings that you will build one of in a location, but there are, for the majority of buildings, you will build lots of them. So for example, you do not put down one armory and it gives you 50% more manpower. No, you build one armory and it gives you 10 manpower. Then you can build 2 armories for 20 manpower, 3 armories for 30 manpower. So the amount of resources you need will increase dramatically as the size of your cities increases, because it's not percent modifiers like Imperator, it's not percent modifiers like EU4. These are flat increases. For example, if you put down a paper mill in a city, 1 paper mill, early game might be impactful. Later in the game, you'd need 10. You need to have a city with 25 paper mills in age 3, right? And that's just how this game is going to work. You're going to need more, and you're going to need more, and you're going to need more, and that's why you need more iron, and you need a lot of this stuff, and that's why you need these giga food provinces, because a city goes from eating maybe 50 food to eating 300 food, and then you're going to need these megatropolis farms, because you're going to have to actually try to feed these cities, and you can get lost in this, is what I'm trying to explain here. These things can become so involved and become so interesting to continue to play through, as I say here, and 5 years and 5 years and 5 years, and you don't notice you've been building your countries for 20 years to go to war. This is why almost all content creators with access to the game haven't really complained or even really noticed the AI issue. The gameplay loop of EU5 completely works and has been enjoyed by literally everyone I've talked to. Unlike EU4, the gameplay loop during peace is not something you want to escape because you get so bored of it. Many of you will say this doesn't matter if the AI doesn't know how to play the game. The question I have to ask you guys is if any of those time lapses you watched showed roads, or tax-based growth, or anything at all other than merely borders showing that the AI knew how to play the game. In any of these time lapses, have you seen anything showing that the AI knew how to build roads? No, you didn't. You would see that the AI did know how to build roads. You would see the AI did increase its tax base. It did get armies. A lot of what the AI actually was doing wasn't shown. All that you were shown was that the AI didn't expand its borders a lot. It's really hard for you guys to conceptualize that everything I just said, the AI is also doing. The AI will build roads, it will build RGOs, it will build its economy, it will build and expand standing armies. It understands how to play the game. It has some hiccups here and there, such as not expanding its marketplace as much as you would hope, but it will, over time, increase its tax base, its road network, its army size. That was actually the most surprising thing to me. I expected another game where the AI barely understood how to play its own game, and this AI seemed to actually build up. What is causing the AI's lack of expansion then? A few issues, really. Less issues than you'd imagine. The Ottomans didn't expand at first because you couldn't core wrong religion land. And then I explained this here, but I can explain this better using my own words right now. Land goes conquered, integrated, cored. Conquered land has a negative control modifier. I think of like negative 20%. Conquered land is terrible. Once you integrate land, it becomes integrated for plus 5% control. Once you core territory, it becomes 20% more control. Therefore, as you can imagine, cored land is very, very much better than integrated or conquered land. What does it take to move from integrated to cored? It will automatically core land that is at least majority of an accepted culture and what used to be majority of your religion. This meant that the Ottomans couldn't core anything. They could only keep it integrated. With Anatolia also being lots of woods and lots of hills, it meant that their proximity control didn't reach very far into Anatolia. A recent change removed the religious requirement from coring, as many of you probably were hoping they would. And this meant that the Ottomans could actually core land so long as they either assimilated enough Greeks or accepted the Greeks. And this obviously made the Ottomans significantly more powerful. Another issue has been alliance blocks. The AI doesn't seem to ever want to break alliances, and alliances use far too little diplomatic relations. As I just mentioned, the AI will slowly increase in power over time, and when the AI can have 7 alliances, yes, actually, they can have that many, it will be almost impossible to push through 8 different AIs. Now, the amount of diplomatic relations that an alliance takes depends on their power relative to yours, meaning that, yes, the AI, because it's allowed so many diplomatic relations right now due to some recent changes, it will just spam alliances using every single diplomatic relation. Then because they're all increasing at power, they will all be able to maintain their alliances with each other. In many time lapses, you saw the Ottomans reach into the Balkans and then stop. Why was that? Because Serbia, Bulgaria, Kiev, Muscovy, Poland, Wallachia, and Hungary had all allied each other. There's not much the Turks can do against almost 100,000 defenders. In my own game, I had seen that this one, Hungary actually managed to kill Serbia, good for them, but I had seen in a giant alliance block, I had seen Serbia, Wallachia, Poland, Kiev, and Muscovy all work together. And I think I had counted 50,000 levies between them, plus their standing armies, plus the mercenaries they would inevitably hire. There was no way the Ottoman AI was ever going to be convinced to attack through there. So that's why you often see these time lapses where the Ottomans push into the Balkans and then just sit there, because they cannot push through these alliance blocks, unfortunately. And I do believe that this issue will be addressed and looked at. A third issue is actually rather silly. The AI on that build was unfortunately incapable of using mid to late game CBs. Not something that sounds good to say out loud, of course. And people will say, this close to release, what a disaster. I don't really think it's that big of a deal though, as it was caught, it was fixed, and as I explained above, it doesn't actually impact people's gameplay loops nearly as much as you would think. Whether or not the Ottomans conquer Hungary doesn't impact me playing Austria as much as you would think, because when I'm playing Austria, I'm mostly managing my country, I'm adding land to my country, I'm going through the different ages, I'm using the different buildings in the different ages, I'm going through my situations. Bluntly, it just doesn't impact you nearly as much as it did in EU4 to have the AI not conquer that much. As a last thought, before I try to put an end to this post, I don't think many of you will be reaching 1500 to notice these issues, even if the patch went live as was. This game takes a long time to learn, and I don't think I even hit 1400 for 100 hours of my own time. I kept restarting, and I kept learning new things, and I kept wanting to try new countries with new content. Every time I learned something new, I thought, oh, that's so much better than what I did, and I felt like restarting my run again. And that's what I did. I kept restarting, and I kept learning, and I kept restarting, and I kept learning, because I kept thinking like, oh, that's so obvious. Okay, well, yeah, let's restart because this could be so much better. And then I would play again, and I would go, oh, that's so obvious. I should have done that. And I would restart, and I would go, oh, that's so obvious. And then I would think, well, let me try Poland with this. And then I'll play Poland, and then I would go through their events, and I would go, well, I tried these events in this way. What happens if I try it in this way? And I would try them again. And I would look at me building buildings, and I would go, oh, well, why didn't I try this with my buildings? Instead, I would look at the RGOs, and I'd be like, well, I could have built the roads into... Do you get the idea here? Frankly, I think many of you will not even reach in a very long time, even if this patch went live. As you saw, many of you it would be months before you could even experience this. Many of you do not have time to play 10 hours a day for a week straight to start getting enough time to learn this. Many of you will take months and months to learn this game properly, which is probably more of a concern, actually, that the AI will kill the player, then the AI won't play very well. It will probably be a bigger concern for the developers that the players will need an easy mode and they have done a lot with the tutorials. I haven't played through them since I reworked them, but I think a bigger concern to developers and to people who play the game isn't, will the AI be too easy? It will be, will the AI keep killing the players as they're trying to learn the game? The AI will keep up with you, and it will probably beat you for a good 50 hours. Before 100 hours, it will definitely keep up with you. Many of you are expecting EU5 with the same mentality you did EU4, playing the smallest, most irrelevant nation and conquering your entire continent within 50 years. That's simply not how EU5 is going to play. I recommend all of you play at least a mid-sized country on your first run and really take time to try to learn the game. So, I hope all of this, explaining all of this, is a good explanation for why a time lapse like this doesn't really concern me. Both because I think a lot of you are just not understanding the base gameplay loop of EU5, and because many of these issues, if you actually look into what's going on, are easily explainable. And that's going to be this entire video. So as I wrap this all up, I do recommend, if this is successful and you guys like this sort of thing, I'll try to do this more often and use my Patreon for this. This is a free post. You can go read this. I will, after this video, edit this. I thought I'd given this a read over, and I thought it actually was a bit better than it was. There's definitely some issues in this. I could edit it. Reading some of the stuff out loud, you might have noticed I was like, ooh. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.